During this video, I'm going to be test driving a new camera. I want you to tell me what you think. I'm going to be switching partway through the video, and I'll let you know when I switch. Greetings, friends. Someone asked a really good question. They were talking about, unfortunately I can't remember what country they're from, but in their country it's not legal to start fires. Here in the United States, if we're going out onto national or county or state land, we usually can start a fire. And that's a great advantage. If we're out on a winter adventure and we want to stop and start a big fire, no problem. But what if you can't? You're in a place where it's not legal. That makes things a lot more difficult, especially when you want to go out and have some nice winter adventures. I already did a video on staying warm without fire, but this is the winter version and it's going to be slightly different. I'm also going to introduce you to some of my winter kit. I'd like to start by introducing you to the concept of warmth points. This is just a little mental tool that really can help us if we're going to be out, let's say, for an entire day or longer, to maintain our warmth over time. I almost think of it as like a video game. If you're a gamer or you've gamed in the past, there's all these different stats, right? So here in the little stats, I have my warmth points. Now, my warmth points is just how much heat energy my body has in reserve. And it can be confused with how warm I feel. Sometimes people are going to start feeling cold. I've taken my mittens off to do some tasks. My hands are starting to get cold. I can start to feel like I'm really cold when I still have a good reserve of warmth points inside of me. So mentally I feel cold, but I'm not really in the danger I think. Conversely, I can be keeping myself really warm, trekking hard, but my warmth points can be dropping without me knowing. And then suddenly I'm in the danger zone because I've run out of energy, run out of caloric energy. Your body thermoregulates. So it creates heat. It's awesome. But it needs energy to do that. And that energy has to come from somewhere. It's going to come from food that you've recently ingested, or it's going to come from energy stores in your brown adipose tissue or your white adipose tissue from fat. So my body has these reserves. Now the white fat is not very accessible energy. Brown fat creates a very accessible energy source, but most of us don't have a lot of it. So most of my energy is going to be coming from food that I recently consumed. And that would be a completely different subject to cover what to eat, but I love to eat high-fat things before I'm going out. Those high-fat foods seem to create a long, slow release that allows me to stay out all day and have caloric energy reserves. I can picture my points. I'm going to leave the house. And of course, we don't have an actual readout here. But if you imagine, I woke up with 100 heat points. And then I said, I'm going to eat a really, really good breakfast. So I ate, eggs and lots of olive oil and just a real good kind of fat-based breakfast, avocados. Now, my body has increased that, maybe to 200 or 300 points. As I step outside, I'm immediately going to begin losing those points. And what I'd like to talk about today is how to reduce that rate of loss so that we're not just losing all of our heat energy and we're out of luck within an hour. First, let's look at clothing. I'm going to start at the bottom. Everybody I know laughs at my boots. These things are gigantimous. You probably can't tell, but here, I'll step back. See these things? Oh my gosh. They're huge. And they are super, super, super warm. These are made of canvas. And I'm going to advocate here canvas or leather over the modern materials. A friend of mine bought these boots that were supposed to be good to -40 Fahrenheit or Celsius, the same. And they had a hard kind of rubberized exterior. His feet were constantly cold in them. Part of the secret of boots that really work are boots that breathe. So if you're in the cold, and it's cold enough today that they are not going to melt on the outside. I'm not going to get a problem with these getting wet, especially if I'm not around a fire. Kind of an advantage to not having a fire. So that being said, having them being able to breathe allows for much more warmth. Also, these are loose, so my feet can wiggle around and move inside of there. That also creates warmth instead of packing them in and reducing circulation. I've never had cold feet in these boots. They're made by a little mom and pop business up in northern Minnesota called Cook's Custom Canvas. And again, they're out of my price point, but I found these at a thrift store. I love thrift stores. These cost me next to nothing. They had never been worn. They're 2-3 sizes too big, and again, they're awesome. Leather pants. These were a gift from a friend of mine, and they're completely done by hand. There's nothing better. I'm gonna have to do a video just on leather clothing and why we should go back to that. It's sustainably sourced in the sense that this one might have come from roadkill. A lot of people with a hunt just throw these away out into the woods. If you can get your hands on some of these and learn how to tan them, smoke them properly, we have the ultimate material. These are windbreak, they are fireproof, they are hyper insulative. Blacksmiths, for as long as blacksmithing has probably been going on, they were using leather to insulate when they're picking up really hot things. Works the same for cold. Nothing better. You've seen the shortel, if I'm pronouncing it correctly now, in another video. This is wool, comes all the way up and out to here. And as an undergarment here, it's perfect. It's wool, which I can't say enough good things about wool. And because it comes down like a skirt, it creates a warmth pocket in our vital warmth areas and just makes a huge difference. If I have everything coming up here, I have cracks essentially, right? Where my shirt and my pants join. There's often a line there where I'm gonna have less insulation. This comes down and covers up that line. Makes a huge difference. We've got leather on the top, and then this wool cloak, which another thing. What if we went back to cloaks? Because cloaks have all kinds of advantages. Here, guess I should show you one. This is just an old army wool blanket that Rebecca cut apart and turned into a cloak. So it has extra material up here that naturally was there in the making of it. She didn't have to cut it special. So that wraps around and protects my neck, the back of my neck. In these hoods, ridiculously big hood, this allows me to bury myself down in that hood if it's really cold out. A lot of times, if I have a balaclava or I have some other face mask, I get a lot of condensation until pretty soon I have frozen ice up against my skin. This obviously doesn't allow me to walk very well unless I'm on a frozen lake and going long and straight. But if I have this down, it creates a pocket of warmth inside of the hood. It breathes really well. So I'm not getting that condensation that you get with other materials. And super warm if my face has gotten cold. I don't have a hat on now, but a wool hat would complete this. And mittens, again, if you can go with leather, these are sheep, and the leather is pretty water repellent, it's windproof, and the soft fluffy inside, again, my hands can move in here. Same as the feet, they're not getting squished. Now we've seen the basics of getting a lot of points before I go out, eating good food. Again, fat-based is awesome. Hydrate heavily. And then a good set of clothing. Wool, leather, nothing better. And next consideration is terrain, natural shelter. Pretty obvious things here. If I have a choice of going across a huge frozen lake or going through a woodland, the woodland's going to be a lot more sheltered from wind. Very concerned about wind because convection is going to be one of the largest places that we lose heat when that wind goes by us. Here we have a valley. Down at the bottom of this valley, especially if we're going to spend the night, some people might be concerned that it's going to be coldest down there, kind of a sink. But up on the ridge top, equally, if there's wind, where you could be more exposed. So really thinking about your terrain. If I'm stopping to rest for a little while, can I shelter myself from the wind by using a large tree, a boulder, a rock outcropping? The key here is to wisely utilize our terrain and think about things, especially like wind. How can I protect myself from that wind? Conduction. That is the other way that we're really going to lose heat. Don't sit down. I just sat down on a snowy log, and I'm going to very quickly start to lose heat, especially in a lot of the regular modern materials that we use. Here, it's not so bad. I've got the wool layered, and then I've got the cloak. So an additional layer of wool. And the beautiful thing, another beautiful thing about the cloak, is that when I get up, it's not attached to my body. If I'm wearing clothing that hugs my body, I sit down, the snow is on it, then that snow, if it got wet at all, which it probably will if I sat there long enough, is directly on my body. Here, it's just out blowing around. At the same time, the cloak protects us, right, because it wraps around, but it doesn't hug our body. So it can sit out there, it can dry itself off. It's not as much of a problem. But learning to squat. This is something that every forest monk that comes out to Rewald University, I say this is one of the most essential bushcraft, wilderness skills that you can learn, is to squat. If you can sit comfortably in a squat, then when you need to rest, the only part of my body that's touching the ground is having conductive heat loss is the bottom of my feet. I don't have to sit, which again is going to bleed out that heat through conduction. And this creates a really nice low profile. If I need to put that hood up like I was talking about earlier, and sit underneath here and warm up, I'm protected from the wind. If I found a good terrain area, my face is going to get warm again. And again, the only place I'm touching the ground is with my feet. Learn to squat. It's an awesome skill. If you're just learning the squat and you don't live on perfectly flat terrain, you can cheat it a little bit by making your squat be on a little bit of a hill. So if my heels, here's the hill, and my heels are up and my toes are down, the squat is going to be a lot easier for you. And you might be able to sit it surprisingly well and for a surprisingly long amount of time if you just use that little environmental cheat. Movement. If our body is moving, it's going to produce heat. Now, be careful. It's going to use up more of those heat points. We don't always want to just store the heat points. We might want to use them to make ourselves feel warmer. Movement is going to create more heat. It's also going to burn more of that energy. So we use that wisely. Moving, the best way to move is to be on towards your destination. If you're exploring, be traveling up and down hills, moving over the terrain. That's really going to keep you warm. If your legs are tired because you've been walking for 6 hours, then you might need to mix things up a little bit. You might do martial arts punches or shadow boxing. You might get down and do push-ups. Make sure that only your hands and your mittened hands and your toes are touching the ground. You might do a push-up position plank like that, just holding your body static for a while. Those squats, up and down, these are going to use different muscles than the walk. So you might be exhausted from the walk, but find that you still can do your squats up and down, up and down. Some martial arts practice, if you do kata or kicks or anything like that. If you have a fun kind of adventure-y mindset, pick up a stick and battle a whole bunch of orcs. 10, 15 orcs later, and you're probably going to be starting to feel very warm. Whatever you want to do for movement. But do not sweat. There's a wonderful kind of guideline about the clothes we wear. And that's that if we step outside in our clothing, we want to actually be just slightly cold. When we start moving then, we can warm up to a proper temp. But if I put so much clothes on that I'm warm just sitting there, then if I start moving too much, I could break a sweat. If I get water underneath my clothing, it's not good. That perspiration is going to create heat loss in a major way. So do not sweat, and become aware and cognizant of your fitness level and of when you're going to hit that point that you start sweating. I also want to hit one aspect here that a lot of people don't talk about, and that is stress, especially in conjunction with movement. I might today, in a super calm state of mind, be able to walk up and down these hills for 3 hours at a certain rate and not break a sweat. Tomorrow, at the exact same environmental conditions, the exact same route, but I'm stressed out, I might break a sweat within the first 10 minutes. In fact, we know that stress can make us break into a sweat without moving at all. Stress uses up a lot of energy. If you're stressed, you're going to watch your heat points just dropping, just from being stressed, from nothing else. So learning to cultivate a calm state of mind pays off on so many elements of life that it's crazy, but it actually helps us to stay warm as well. We've been doing a lot of cold conditioning with our forest monks this year, and they've all been telling me that when we do relaxation exercises beforehand, their experience of the cold is much more relaxed. They don't tense against it, they don't fight it, and they don't feel as cold. And they seem to be able to just go and go and go in the cold. Learning to be calm. Move your body to generate heat, but don't be stressed. Now, of course, that takes years and years to cultivate, but if you're watching this channel, you probably are on a journey of calming your mind. And this is just one more way that that is going to pay off. Here's another way that cloak can help. Look at this. I take the bottom of the cloak. This is if I just have to kneel. I'm going to put it over my knees. Now I can kneel for a little bit to do a task. I don't want to stay here too long because I am still going to be losing heat. But when I get up, whoosh, I can go off to the side. It's not on my body anymore. One little thing I forgot to point out. Cloaks are awesome. The final part of this is cold conditioning. I talked a little bit about that brown adipose tissue. If we can start to build that brown fat in ourselves, then we have a heat production source that otherwise is missing. It gives us a little bonus to our points and can make a huge difference. You've heard me talk about cold showers before, down dressing, just wearing a little bit less than you think you need to. Get in the habit of that. I think I've really noticed here with the forest monks that I do more what I'd call acute conditioning. So cold showers, laying in the snow, things where I'm getting small doses of it. But when the forest monks are living out in the cold more often, and they're having to thermoregulate on a regular basis, they outperform me very, very quickly. If you live in a climate-controlled environment, like most of us do, it's really reducing our ability to generate and use effectively our warmth points, our heat points. So consider turning down that thermostat, going with less clothes, spending more time outside. All those things are going to make a big difference in your cold conditioning. Check out the Wim Hof method. That can make huge, huge differences. Anything you can do to make yourself more efficient in the cold. Now, I'm sure I missed some things. So in the comments, tell me what you do to stay warm when you cannot have a fire, specifically in the winter for this video. What are your skills and techniques? What clothing works for you? You know, one more little trick. This is just when you're heading out. And this I got from, my girls are reading the Laura Ingalls Wilder books. And what they would do in these books is they'd take a potato and they'd have it heated up before they went off. And they would take that potato and they would use it like a hot rock. So you could keep it against your belly, you could keep it under your armpit, even tuck it back here in your hood so it's right against the back of your neck. Have that hot potato warming you until the point when it gets cool. Then pull it out and eat it. Eating it? Yes, I know the argument that so digestion uses energy, uses heat, but that potato has a lot of calories. It's actually going to way more than balance out. So eat that potato, even when it's still a little bit warm, and you're going to get all that extra fuel. It's a great way to just extend those points a little bit at the beginning of an adventure, and that's going to mean that you can extend that adventure a little bit longer. Hope you found this helpful. Love to you all. Can't wait to see what you have to say in the comments.